whole channel is about my life in Nigeria. I haven't told you a lot about what happened before I came. Why did I even decide to come? What was it like? And what did people say? What was I expecting? So in this video, I'm gonna fill you in. He's gonna scam you, either do Yahoo. I think we should also acknowledge that this person's perception of Africa was really warped. There were times where I literally slept next to the bathroom, so I got very angry. It's damaging for Africa. Let's get into it. I met Banji in 2025 via a mutual friend. We met in person at first in Vietnam, and then we started a long distance relationship across continents. Like, he went back to Nigeria, I went back to, well, I stayed in Vietnam. We would video call multiple times a day, like in between doing stuff. You know, we did our best to keep up a relationship, but if you've ever been in an LDR, a long distance relationship, you would know that there's only so much you can build together from like a phone connection. Do you know what I mean? I want to wake up with this person. I want to make them breakfast. I want to do the small things, like, and we'd started to miss one another. I, at the time, was way more flexible in terms of, you know, just my passport, right? So I was like, okay, maybe I'd be the one who makes the move. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wanted to see what it was like in Nigeria. Like, I had never been to the African continent before, let alone to West Africa, let alone to Nigeria. And yeah, so I put my hand up and said, hey, why don't I move to you? I honestly had no real understanding of what it was like in this part of the world. What I did have was a whole load of fragmented pieces of information about Africa that I'd kind of been given throughout the course of my life. Just from like what I'd heard people say, what I'd seen in the media, all that. It's really damaging in terms of like correcting the imbalances in the world. It's damaging for Africa. So first of all, I had been told, I can't remember by who, and to be honest with you, I didn't believe it could possibly be true, but I had been told that Africa as a continent wasn't safe for a white person. Now look, that is not the case, but even if it was the case, let's take a moment to acknowledge the horrific legacy that my ancestors have left here and in the systems that the world still runs on. You know, systems that lean towards white people's favor. I think we should definitely acknowledge that within this whole discussion, right? I think we should also acknowledge that this person's perception of Africa was really warped, really inaccurate. I mean, apart from anything else, you know how large the African continent is? And are you aware of how many different countries there are here and how many different cultures and types of humans? Like, that kind of blanket statement, it just cannot be applied to a place this large and diverse, you know? I mean, it shouldn't be applied anywhere really, but especially not here. But I think that kind of misconception is something that a lot of people from the West maybe carry. I don't know, but like, look, it's a damaging misunderstanding. And like, yeah, you know, you definitely do stand out looking like I do in certain areas of this continent. In Nigeria, I do stand out quite a bit, especially if I leave Lagos, because there aren't many people who look like me. But the end result of that usually isn't any kind of safety risk. It's just people wanting to know about my story. Like, wow, are you Bo? Where are you from? Where are you going? Why are you here? Which I think is nice. And like, compare that to the kind of reception that Nigerian people probably would get back in Australia, where I'm from, for exactly the same reason, because they look different. I'm gonna let that comparison just sit here for a minute and do with that what you will. Another one was that Africa as a continent, again, as a full continent, was less stable, less at peace, less developed, struggling. And look, that is a situation for a lot of people in various parts of various countries across this continent. But just as you wouldn't say the whole of Europe is like XYZ, or the whole of Asia is like XYZ, you can't say the whole of Africa is like XYZ. It's just inaccurate, and it's a kind of ignorant blanket statement or blanket perception to have. I want to pause to thank today's video sponsor, Tenalytics. If you're trying to get into tech in the UK, US, Canada, you already know how difficult it can be. Tenalytics helps you navigate it all, using real insight into those markets and proven strategy to get you ready to apply and actually land the job. Check the link in the description after you watch this video to find out more and get your tech career started. Back to the video. The kind of stories about Africa that reach tier 1 media, the big names where most people will just turn to for their news, the kinds of narratives from Africa that reach those publications and then also end up on the front page, end up being pushed, end up being read, get all the reads, are usually the negative ones. The ones about war, suffering, famine, humanitarian crises, very, very real, very horrific issues that do deserve attention, yes. and even more than that, deserve real action. But that is not all that's happening here. And I think that a lot of people would agree with me over there when I say that there just isn't a lot of the good stuff being talked about, being driven in the media. You know, you don't hear about the successes, the incredible tech innovations, like the arts collaborations and the creative hubs and the money that moves around this continent, you know, the business that is built here, the startups, like in Nigeria alone. I mean, have you seen the different tech startups just kind of popping up here? Like, there's things happening in Africa. And I don't think that the media does a good job of telling the world about those things. Another one is the NGOs. You know, you've all seen the ads, I'm sure. It's usually a very poor looking child who also looks really hungry. Editing Zoe here. I just wanted to add that yes, of course, the NGOs are using this content to drive donations, and they do great work. The problem is that not all African kids have that experience of life. And there is a lack of content being put out there that shows the other side. I think that the complete echo chamber, it causes a lot of people in the West to have this really warped perception of the continent where they only think that this one narrative is going on. People also told me things about Nigeria in particular. So number one, and I think you guys have probably been waiting for this one, a lot of people did say, he's gonna scam you, either do Yahoo. They told me all these things, right? And now look, there are scammers here, and you should be careful of that. You should never be sending money to somebody if they're rushing you to get married, or if there's a really obvious kind of incompatibility. Yeah. However, my man is a walking green flag. He's nothing like any of that. And it really bothered me, actually, to be honest with you, that people would paint him with that brush. Nigeria is one of the most populous countries in Africa. In fact, I think it might be the most populous. I'll look that up, confirm it, and put it on the screen. How can one possibly assume that every single person is going to be into that kind of thing? It's not accurate. And it certainly wasn't accurate for my wonderful, hardworking, brave, proud, strong leader of a man. So I got very angry about that, and I used to just shut conversations down, to be honest with you. People said I'd get food poisoning. Now, look, I don't know if I'm the best judge of this, because my stomach is, I challenge you to give me food poisoning. I challenge you. It's not possible. And the reason is, when I went to India when I was 17, I left the country on my own. I saved up for like a year. I was working in a cafe every single day for a year, saving up money until I could finally afford to take myself off to India. And I remember when I first got there, I was really naive. Like, I was a 17-year-old who'd never gone off on her own, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I'll just eat anything, whatever. I then got very sick, because the reality is our stomachs get used to the bacteria balance and concentration of where we spend most of our time. I wasn't prepared for the kinds of bacteria that I came across in India. And whether you agree with my decision or not, 17-year-old Zoe decided to stick it through. Maybe if I push myself for 6 months, I will eventually come out the other side with like a super stomach, you know. Look, it went up and down. There were times where I literally slept next to the bathroom. There were other times where I'd take an Imodium and I'd move on with my life. I came out with a stomach of iron, and in the many years since then that I've spent living in Southeast Asia, I've had food poisoning maybe like 5 times, you know, and that's in like 12, 13, 14 years. I also, in Nigeria, eat anything I want, drink anything I want. I boil the tap water to cook. I sometimes boil it to drink too if I run out of water. Like, I don't worry too much, and I don't get sick. So nobody needed to warn me about that. However, I would like to note, if you haven't gone through a 6-month conditioning of iron cladding your stomach, then yeah, when you travel anywhere outside your own country, avoid ice unless you made it yourself. If you buy bottled water, make sure the seal is not broken. Only eat at restaurants where it's really busy. Local people like it. Local people are not getting sick, and the turnover is fast. So like, especially if it's street food, you want to eat somewhere where the food's getting made and sold and made and sold. It's not sitting outside for a long time. Thank you for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to follow along, and leave me a Nigeria flag emoji. Let's fill this video's comment section with green, white, green. And of course, if you have any questions, ask away in the comments. I'll meet you there. Thank you, bye.